Hello guys, welcome back to another video. So another N47 video today. We're going to be working on my BMW E60, the 520D with the N47 engine. Now we are actually going to be doing a service today, and we're going to be doing ultimately the two things that are going to prolong the life of your engine. Now that is an oil and filter change and also a fuel filter change. Now I like to swap out my oil and oil filter every 5,000 miles or so. You guys know how I feel about the oil changes on the N47 engine. You're better off changing it more often than not. So I like to change it every 5,000 miles or so with 5W30LL04 oil, what is recommended from factory, and a good Bosch oil filter. So then this is the oil that I like to use. Like I said, it's 5W30 and it meets the LL04 BMW spec. And this is the oil filter. Like I said, I like to use Bosch when it comes to my filters. Very good quality, and yeah, they generally haven't let me down. And when it comes to the fuel filter, I also like to use Bosch, of course. So this is the fuel filter we are going to be replacing today. Now then, the fuel filter is often a forgotten service item for whatever reason, but I like to swap mine out every year without fail, and that turns out to be around every 10,000 miles or so. Now then, without further ado, let's get outside and let's get cracking. So then, as we can see, we have the car up in the air, supported by 3 axle stands, one on either side on the jacking point and then one underneath the subframe. We still have the car running just because we want the oil to be as warm as possible right before we go ahead and drain it. Obviously, the warmer the oil, the better it will flow. There we are then, engine should be up to a decent temperature now. So we can go ahead and remove the engine cover. So now what we'll do then is crack the oil filter loose. We want the oil to drain from the oil filter back down into the sump before we go ahead and drain the oil. So I have one of these oil filter wrench tools. I'm just going to crack this loose. And now that it's loose, we should be able to unscrew this by hand. Now we don't want to remove this fully, we just want to lift it up and you'll hear the oil drain from the filter, and we just want to let that sit for a couple of minutes. But now that the oil has drained out of the oil filter for a good couple of minutes, we should be okay to lift this up and remove it from the oil filter housing now. And now to remove the oil filter from the housing cap, pretty easy. All you need to do is give it a good pull. There you are. That's the filter removed. Yeah, that's our old dirty oil filter. As you can see, this is what it looks like after around 5,000 miles or so. Diesel oil virtually turns black as soon as it hits the engine, as soon as you pour it in, so the colour is nothing to be worried about. But we can see just from looking through the filter there doesn't appear to be any large particles in here, and yeah, the filter is still intact. So if you was to do an oil change, let's say every 20,000 miles, this oil filter may start crumbling apart. So yeah, it's one of the reasons why you need to change this out regularly. Now then, I'm just going to place the oil filter cap back into the housing. Now that's just to prevent anything from falling down there while I go ahead and drain the oil. And now if we take a look underneath, to access the sump bolt, we just need to remove this cover here. It's just held in by, well, it should be 3 8mm screws. It appears that I'm missing one, so we'll go ahead and remove the 2 that are in place. And if we take a look up here, we can see the sump plug itself. So this thing here, it is a 17mm. So we'll go ahead and crack this loose. There we are. And we will position our drain pan, and we'll go ahead and unscrew the drain plug by hand, and we'll just let it drain. There we are. And to help it drain a little bit easier, if you go ahead and remove the oil filler cap, let's put that to one side. Now you don't need to do this, but I also like to remove the dipstick as well, just to give that a good clean. Make sure the nitrile O-rings are still good on the dipstick itself, and we can just go ahead and reinstall this then. And then we can go ahead and start getting the new oil filter ready. So we'll go ahead and remove the cap again. Just like to give the oil filter housing a good white brown inside. So if we just go ahead and remove our original O-ring from the cap itself. Is that removed? Then we can go ahead and install our new O-ring. Make sure it goes in the correct slot. A lot of people seem to get this wrong. No, it's not that one. It is this one. There we are then, that's how the O-ring should sit. Then if we click our new oil filter into the cap, just push it in. There we are. Now we can install this back into the oil filter housing. And because we have this little stub here, we need to make sure this goes into the hole at the bottom of the oil filter housing. So make sure it goes down, and then obviously you can start turning then. Yeah, so you'll know if it's gone into the hole or not. You should hear a kind of like a pop, and then you will be able to turn the cap then. If you can't turn the cap with it catching on the threads, you more than likely miss the hole that stub goes in. But now we can go ahead and tighten it down. And the oil filter cap itself then needs to be taut down to 25 Newton meters. There we are. And we can just give everything a good clean down. And while we've been doing that, the oil should now have pretty much completely drained from the oil pan. So we can go ahead and get our sump plug ready for reinstallation. So we go ahead and remove the old crush washer and then install our new one. There we are. It's a new crush washer installed. We can go ahead and install this into the oil pan. So then we can now reinstall our sump plug. And again, torque it down to 25 Newton meters. We'll just give things a quick clean down. Now we can go ahead and reinstall this trim panel. It should go like that. There we are then, that's that reinstalled. And now all that's left to do for the oil change is to get the car back on the ground and then fill it up with oil. But because we still have the fuel filter to do, it'd be silly to lower the car down on the ground first, because we need to go ahead and remove this trim panel, because I believe the fuel filter is somewhere around here on the left side of the car. So yeah, let's get this trim panel removed. So then here is the fuel filter itself. You don't have to fully remove this under tray, as long as you can get enough access to it. Now we can see we have a couple of pipes and an electrical connector. Now the electrical connector and the pipe this side, just leave alone, there's no need to touch it. The only thing we need to disconnect is this pipe here, and we need to remove this clip. Basically this block here. This is the heater. This heats the fuel before it goes into the fuel filter. So we just need to unclip the heater away from the fuel filter, and then undo this pipe here, and then just unbolt the bracket, and then the filter should come away then. First thing I'm going to do then is just release the 10mm nut that holds the bracket in place. And that's the bracket loose. And undo this Jubilee clamp, which is just easier if we put a socket on that. So I'm going to get a socket and put that on that Jubilee clamp just to buzz it off. There we are, that's plenty loose. Now if we go ahead and prise this pipe off of the fuel filter, and get ready with something to catch the fuel in, because we will have some fuel run out of here. There we are. Then what we need to do is unclip the heater from the filter itself. So you just need to remove this big clip. There you are. Now this should pull off. And then what you need to do is remove this bracket from the filter. It's just had in by this T40 screw. And as you can see, I've went ahead and installed that bracket onto the new fuel filter, along with the new gasket as well. Now I'm just going to go ahead and get this thing reinstalled. So there is the new fuel filter bolted in place. Jubilee clamp nice and tight. There's that clip back in that holds the filter to the fuel heater, and then the bracket as well that holds the fuel filter to the bottom of the car. I'm going to go ahead and button up all of the under trays, and then we'll get the car back on the ground. There we are then, that's all of the under trays reinstalled. Let's get this car back on the ground. And now that we're back on the ground, let's get some oil in this thing. So the N47 holds between 5 and 6 litres of oil, so I'll go ahead and put 5 in, and then we'll go ahead and check the dipstick. So there's around 5 litres in there now. I'll go ahead and check the dipstick. We are around the midway point, so I'm going to put, say, 1/3 of a litre in, then we'll check again. Yeah. Right around the maximum mark now, so we should be good enough to start, but we are going to need to add more once we have started it up. And now comes the fun part. Because we have opened up the fuel system, we have introduced air into the system, it's going to take a little bit of time to get fuel pressure to the fuel rail, so it is going to take a bit of time to start. But best thing you can do is just go ahead and prime the pump a bunch of times. So just, you know, switch the ignition on, switch it off, switch the ignition back on, and just do that 5 or 6 times, and then you can go ahead and try and start it. Now you can actually prime the fuel pump, say after you've changed the fuel filter with ISTA. Now not a lot of people have ISTA, so this is the kind of DIY method you can do at home. So yeah, like I said, just keep switching the ignition on and off, get as much fuel pumped up as possible, and once you've primed the fuel pump a bunch of times, then is the time to go ahead and try and fire this thing up. There you go, it's just building fuel pressure, and there we go, fires up. Okay, so oil level is showing maximum, but you shouldn't always trust this, so if you do have a dipstick, check the dipstick. That's exactly what I'm going to do now. Yeah, and we're around the halfway point now, so we do need to add some more oil, about another 1/3 of a litre I would say. So I've just checked the dipstick again, and we are right at the maximum, which is perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and reinstall the engine cover now. And that is the oil and filter and the fuel filter now done. Okay then, so that is the oil and oil filter and the fuel filter replaced on my BMW 520d with the N47 engine. Like I said, I like to do these jobs as often as possible because I do want my engine to last. I would also recommend you guys to do the same as well if you do want your engine to last. You know, the price of oil, a good oil filter and a good fuel filter is really not expensive. I will leave the links down below for all of the items I have used today. And I want to thank all of you guys for watching, so please remember to give this video a like, leave a comment down below, subscribe if you have not already done so, and I will see you all in that next one. Peace!